Welcome to Natural Born Talents. Today's subject is a follow-up on the series of The Secret of the Angels. Now, of course, the biggest cult in the Matrix is the Matrix itself. As said in previous videos, everything in the Matrix is the opposite of what is out there in the universe, and it's run by the deep state, the cabal, the secret societies, or whatever you want to call them, which of course are controlled by the angels, the devil, and the like. In other words, it's designed for the baby soul, the egotist, and the name of the game is who's playing with the ego the most. But what about the counter cults, the cults that try to buck the system? Well, they are all part of the game too. And in today's video, I'm going to take a deeper look into what that means. Now, as I've said in the past, I don't like bringing up people's names into these videos. And the main reason, again, is because some of these cult games have not been finished playing out. However, I chose Charles Manson as the one exception because he was the most relevant to all of these videos on how cults and the Matrix works and how it's related to the transition. In the previous videos, I didn't give a deeper look into some of the players of cult games. What happens to people when the cult ends, and who is really guilty? Now, these videos generally are not about individuals, but about how the Matrix works, how cults work. So you can work around them, so you can stay away from them, or you can get out of them. They're not about individuals, because each and every person's life, especially the ones in these so-called counter cults, never have a real conclusion until the very end, which means they left the Matrix for good. More on that later. So why were the 60s so important? Well, the 60s and the hippie movement was really a reflection of the transition, albeit a rather watered-down kind of quaint, silly look at the transition, but there was a lot more meaning to it than meets the eye. Of course, the Matrix wants to make it look silly, childish, or in Charles Manson's case, crazy and insane. So I'm going to go over some of the details I left out in previous videos, again, from the outside of the Matrix, looking in. In the 60s, we got to see how the Matrix was trying to tear down the very fabric of the hippie movement because they were afraid of it. The dark side of the Matrix only likes to enslave, and the members of the dark side of the Matrix want to have their privileged life, their control over humanity. What's okay for them is not okay for you. And things like tune in and drop out did not sit well with some of the people of the Matrix, or anything else that was about free love or freedom or peace, for that matter. So to get rid of the hippie movement, the Matrix needed some sort of excuse to shut it down, or to at least make it look like it died naturally, which in part it did. Now, in the Matrix, there always have been these secret societies that hide in the shadows of the Matrix. So they needed to do this without exposing themselves. And the best way to do that is to get counter cults of the Matrix to look like hippies in order to destroy the movement, or at least weaken it enough so the peace movement ends quickly. To do this, they hire Satan. Sometimes they hire moralistic angels, but it's usually Satan. And so Satan will start a cult. Now, Satan is very clever in that he will use the cult members to point out the very problems of the Matrix, especially the moralistic side of it. And while Charles Manson wasn't the only one, he was a great candidate for such a deception. If you look at his childhood, it was miserable. They also tossed him around all of these moralistic institutes, which didn't do anything to reform him, but only increase his anger towards the Matrix. He couldn't live his life the way he wanted to. He got tired of being shoved around from one reform school to another, and Satan knew this very well and could play off that anger quite easily. And I'm sure Charles Manson would have jumped at the chance to get back at the Matrix for what it did to him as a child. However, what he probably didn't know is that Satan works for both sides. And in the end, the real cult leaders, the real sleazeballs, are the ones that profited off of the demise of the hippie movement and the drama that surrounded the Charles Manson incident. If you want to find who the real guilty people are of this game, look at the people who benefited from this incident. Who got paid, who got revenge, who got somebody they didn't like out of the way, etc., etc. The other thing the Matrix was scared of is that there was a rumor that Christ had actually come down to play with the hippies, sort of a prelude to the second coming, so to speak. So Satan's motivation for using Charles Manson to help destroy the hippie movement was the biggest motivation to play both sides and turn on Manson and actually work for the moralists. Satan is very afraid of Christ and the Christ angels. He knows that if they return, as well as any of the deities, his game is over and he has to go back to his crap hole in the inferno. In other words, Charles Manson ended up being a tool for the dark side of the Matrix. Looking at his videos, he has some valid points. And even though I am sure that the deep state put out a narrative against Charles Manson that is probably more of a lie than anything he said, in the Matrix, it does not justify interfering with another person's life, especially by murdering them. There is no justification for it. The real justice comes when the people involved in setting up the counter cults as well as controlling or going along with the Matrix get exposed and taken out of positions of power. Only then will we have real justice. And this is what's being done at this time. We are seeing for the first time in the Matrix in our lifetimes the real wielders of the Matrix being exposed. More on that later. If that's the case, how guilty is Charles Manson and his followers? Well, that depends. Now, any act of violence is seldom truly justified, but that doesn't mean anybody who committed violence didn't learn from their mistakes. That's what redemption's all about. To me, Charles Manson was set up. So was his followers. However, to be truly condemned, the souls of each of these individuals would have to have an insatiable need to destroy another person's life again. That's what karma's all about. If these souls have any kind of repentance, any kind of guilt for their actions, they probably will pay off their debts in this life, get another life, undo the damage they caused, and leave the Matrix, probably for good. And though I have my guesses, I can't say for certainty who is going to fall forever and who is going to come out of this game in the end. And because of this, this is the very reason I don't like to bring up people's names when dealing with these kinds of cults and problems, because you never really know until it's truly over. If Charles Manson comes back in another life and plays Satan's game all over again, well, all the angels, the deities, and the ancestors will probably say, give up on him, he ain't gonna make it. But on the other hand, it may be that Satan was just using him so much that the actual violence caused against people Satan doesn't like could be viewed more Satan than Charles Manson. Now, that doesn't justify anything. In fact, a lot of people probably should have suggested to Charles Manson and his followers, don't take on the Matrix head on. You will lose, at least at this time. A better option would have been something like the Taylor Camp in Hawaii. If you don't know what that is, I'll leave a link in the description below. Or do what the Buddhists did. Go live up in the mountains and practice what you believe. But then again, a lot of people could argue Charles Manson was born to do what he did. The only real way I could answer the guilt or innocence of each individual is to go over every single step these people took. Talk to their ancestors, talk to the angels, talk to everybody who's involved, and find out the truth of what happens to these people in the end. But having said that, Satan is very good at making anyone, including very good people, look evil, look destructive, look angry, look hostile. That's why the darker part of the Matrix hires him. He's the best. On the other hand, if you get stronger than Satan and get past it, then it's not hard to redeem yourself and undo any damage that has been done. But what about the victims? Well, the victims were probably hired to be killed, as said previously. Some of them actually may be part of the Matrix, the cult of the Matrix, and they may have been targeted by jealous people and or they wanted to play victim. Hard to say. Again, I'd have to go over each individual's life, and that would take a lifetime to do so. The point isn't really about the individuals. The point is about the patterns we see in cults. They're all part of the Matrix, the counter cults and the Matrix itself, the main cult. And certainly somebody like me does not fit in the Matrix. But I don't think I could take the actions of a counter cult because it would be too destructive. And the golden rule of the Matrix is you're not allowed to interfere with another person's life unless you have permission, even though that rule is broken by the baby souls all the time. Again, the Matrix is designed for those beings. Unfair as that may seem, that leads to what the transition is all about. Those who no longer need the Matrix to grow from, as well as those who have corrupted themselves with the Matrix and cannot move on to anything else. The separation of these two, and if you look at today's politics, you see two sides forming. One on the very dark part of the Matrix who tells you to do what they think is right, which they have done for thousands of years, and those who are seeking freedom. And if this can be done without any means of violence, those seeking freedom will have won their game for sure. So in conclusion, how does that affect you, your aura, or anything else for that matter? Well, this game is not always played on a large scale. This is sometimes played at a family scale. And you can see that when you have an individual who is really struggling in life trying to make ends meet and everyone else in the family is doing well, that individual has likely been sold out by the family. To confirm this, you just simply have to look at the family members and see how they act. Do they act like it's okay for us but not for you? Are they condescending to you? Do they act like baby souls, elitists, and so on? If they do, you are likely being played, just like Charles Manson. For the many years that I've worked with people within cults, most of the cult followers had families who put them there. Their auras tended to be the nonconformist, the lavender, the crystal, the magenta, but sometimes the yellow, the red, and others. However, there is a way out. It's a lot of work and you need patience, but it can be done. Well, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments section below, and we'll see you in the next video.